is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 371 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we are speaking with Cherie DeMayo, who I actually had an opportunity to meet in person at a local to Charlotte networking event. And I thought she would be the perfect person to come on and speak about income-based personal time management. She is actually offering 2 separate assessments for all of you that you're going to want to make sure to hop over to the show notes and grab. We're going to talk about those further into the episode. I also want to bring up the fact that in this episode, we talk a lot about the fact that multitasking and batching and time blocking, all things that we do a deep dive inside of the Insiders group. So if you haven't already taken advantage of that group and joined, make sure that you do. That's going to be linked in your show notes as well. All right, you guys, let's dive in. Hi, Cherie. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I hope you're doing well too.
I am. Thank you so much. Before we actually jump into this conversation about income-based time management, I would love for you to introduce yourself and your business to my audience.
I would be happy to. Well, I'm Cherie DeMayo, and I'm CEO and founder of Biz Growth Inc. We will be celebrating 40 years. Man, am I aging myself in another in 2024. But I'm very proud of what we've built. Biz Growth Inc. is all about helping entrepreneurial businesses grow in value, worth, and prosperity. And what we do is we look at corporate culture, we look at operations, how to replicate success, how to build and enhance value, how to be a preferred employer, how to be a preferred provider of services and goods. And we really invested our time and energy around not just proving what works or doesn't work, but validating what works and doesn't work. So we have been very entrepreneurial, which is very unique for a strategy training and intellectual property development firm. But we have been very entrepreneurial in staying one step ahead of what entrepreneurs need to build that value and to be a company that no one can imagine being without. That's our goal.
Yes. And I can definitely see how, even after a simple conversation that you and I had at a networking event here in Charlotte, how your company can help small business owners really get a better idea on what their business can look like so that Absolutely. They can see it for the future and what they could potentially do with it.
Right. Entrepreneurs, so often the business is like another child to them, right? And the dilemma with that is that the difference between a child, a human child that grows up and then moves on and builds a life of their own, too often entrepreneurs build a business, but they're not allowing it to thrive beyond them. And that is so critical. And there's so many things that we've seen over the years that we're trying to help correct, so that we believe every business that got started should thrive well beyond that entrepreneur. And there are so many ways that entrepreneur can do it. And they just need to know how. If you don't know what you don't know, you don't know.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things that I hear from entrepreneurs, bloggers, influencers, creatives is that time management is an issue. So let's start off with what is time management and why is it important? How would you define it?
Okay, so I define time management, and I'm going to share a little story. It's really important because in 1995, I had this, if only I had more time mentality. And I came bursting into my office, sat down next to my office manager, and I said, if only there were more hours in the day. And that office manager, she did not miss a beat. And she said, well, you have the same amount of time as everybody else. It's just a matter of how you use it. And I kind of wanted to slap her at that moment because that's not what I wanted. I want to hear, oh, Cherie, you can do it. You're a multitasker. You're a high achiever. You're super. But no, she said exactly what I needed to say. to hear. And it was just like this big kind of wash over me moment when I went up to my office after that comment and I said, she's right. None of us get more than 24 hours in a day. None of us get less. And it's the one asset. That's when I started calling it an asset. It's the one asset that all of us have the same amount of given to us in a day. No one gets 25 hours. No one only gets 23 hours or whatever it might be. And so I started to take a step back and I really realized that time management to me is energy management. It's priority management. And it truly is an asset that needs to be managed in how you approach using your time, leveraging your time, and then also leveraging other people's time.
Yes. Oh, so well put. And that story, I can see you getting upset with her for sure. But it was a learning lesson, right?
It was. I thank her. I recognized her in my first book, Me, Myself, and Ink, because it was, you have moments in life where you'll never forget them because they were that profound. They were that meaningful. And that was one of those moments. That was one of many moments where it inspired what we now offer to entrepreneurs and everything else. Because once I started viewing time very differently, I started approaching it with my clients. And I'm always my guinea pig first. Mm-hmm. and then my clients get to know how it works. But that was a significant moment in time for me. Yeah.
Excellent. So how can we assess our current time management skills?
Well, I'm going to share some things probably people don't think. A lot of times people will say, make a list or, all of this. Well, the first thing I want people to take a look at is, do you hit the snooze button in the morning? Okay. So, when I am doing a talk about time management with like an emerging leader group across the country, I ask that question, how many of you hit the snooze button? Anywhere from 70% or more people will say they hit the snooze button. And what a lot of people don't realize is when you hit that 9 minutes and that next 9 minutes and the 8 minutes or whatever you set that snooze to go off at, your body is recycling all over again in its sleep. And you're not getting extra sleep. You're actually making your body feel like it didn't get enough sleep. So by not just getting up and starting the day, by hitting that snooze button 3, 4, 5 times, every time you hit that snooze button, your body feels more tired, not more rested. So that's number one. So you're starting your day off delaying the day is basically what you're doing. You're starting the day off, delaying the day, and think about the mentality. First of all, your physical feeling. And, all I have to say is if you do a week where you don't hit the snooze button, you just get up and you're going to feel more energy. That's energy management. Okay. So the other thing to ask yourself is, okay, if you're a big multitasker, are you truly multitasking or are you just moving things around? All right. And so are you truly multitasking or are you being pulled in a million different directions? It's distracting you from being able to focus and get certain things done. So that's another question I like to ask. And then are you spending anytime doing what you absolutely love doing? If you can't answer that question with an emphatic yes, then okay, that's another way you assess time management. Are you spending time that you really don't want to be spending, but you'd feel guilty if you didn't spend time in that way? You feel an obligation. You're trying to make somebody happy. You are afraid to let go of something, even though you don't enjoy it. There's so many things. And that gets at some of the wishful and fearful thinking that I've identified with people, a fear of letting go, a fear of losing control. Are you micromanaging too much? And so you're stealing time away from yourself because you have to be involved in every little thing and check every little thing. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but this is what I think different questions that I like to ask around assessing time versus what I think the typical approach is. Because again, time is an asset. Time is energy and priority management.
Yes, we have talked so much about how multitasking isn't necessarily the best thing for your business and how batching is your better way to go so that you can make sure that you're not shifting in your different theories and what you're thinking about, whether you're writing an email or creating content or shooting with photography. It's just different parts of your brain, and it can slow you down when you're.
It does. And you know what's interesting is later today, I'm going to be doing a continuing education webinar that's going to go across the country to HR department, professionals, CPAs and everything. And it's all about, do you know what time is costing? So this is like all about time today for some reason. And it's about people and process. And I'm a data geek. I love data. And so I found two statistics that relate to what we've just been talking about. So one statistic is multitasking has actually been documented to cost companies $450 million a year. So no, when you're trying to do different things, your brain starts, right? And so multitasking to a certain point. So the best multitasking is multitasking where it is like, let's say an example of multitasking is listening to music while you're working out. So maybe listening to music while you're crunching numbers. Like I like to listen, when I'm crunching numbers, I like to listen to classical music. It's actually very good for your brain. But if I'm crunching numbers and then I stop and do this, guess what? I'm possibly going to make a mistake with those numbers, right? So the other thing that's fascinating is the procrastination and what it cost just overall, companies, individuals combined, $650 billion. Now, how did they get that figure? They got that figure from, you decide to pay a bill late. That's procrastinating. You get a fee, right? So they add up anything and everything. You decide to take a longer loan terms, which is procrastinating paying it off. And so you pay more interest. There's just all of these things that they calculate into both companies and individuals and what procrastination costs them. It's just fascinating.
So one of the questions that I have for you is this idea of how do we base our personal time management on income? I love this idea of looking at it from an income standpoint because I have said over and over again, if you are not treating your business like a business, looking where profit is coming in, where your loss is. So how would we go about basing our personal time management on income?
Well, we developed what's called income-based time management. Probably, I'm thinking it has been at least over 20 years ago. We started working with business owners and helping them understand this. And part of the reason we were doing that is twofold. First of all, we started it with what would be considered businesses that bill for their time. Okay. Like accounting firms, architectural firms, engineering firms, any kind of firm that bills for their time. That's where it started. But as we developed the 5 buckets of time that anyone in a company spends, we realized it didn't matter whether they billed for their hours or they were producing a widget in a manufacturing facility. And that is when I was sitting across from a plant manager. He was frustrated because his production line was costing him money because of a mistake that was made or a machine that hadn't gotten fixed in time, whatever it was. And he said, they're just costing me money and they're just the cost of doing business. And I go, no, they're income producing. And so if that production line stopped, what happens? All right. So that's when I had the epiphany. This was probably 15, 18 years ago when I was applying this to billable per hour companies. And then I realized that it focused on everybody. And so I sat there and I shared with him, I said, everyone in your company has value to the bottom line and to the profitability of the company, including yourself. And so that is income producing, which is actually producing what you sell, income generating, which is generating the sales. That's marketing, that's promotion, that's the sales calls, the presentations, what have you. Production, income producing is actually delivering what you've sold, whatever it might be, all that goes involved in it. Income sustaining is keeping the sales going. That's everything from customer relations to vendor relations. People are amazed at what all falls into the income sustaining. Income sustaining is accounts receivable, accounts payable. So people are all of a sudden, because if you're not doing that well, then cash isn't flowing in. You don't have good cash flow management. That could be a problem for your business, right? Income supporting is anything that's supporting the operations. It's everything from, equipment maintenance, accounting, HR. But what you find is that different particular departments in your business will touch all these areas. And then you have income enhancing. And that's where a business owner really needs to be putting a lot of their energy in. The problem is, and their time, but the problem is they're sucked into income generating, producing, supporting, or sustaining. And so when I first started introducing this, I had to work on the entrepreneurs first. And then I had to help them realize the value of their people, because here's the other problem. We have a low engagement workforce. Gallup said that it was 35%, and they were excited that it had gone from 29% to 35% of our workforce is fully engaged in their work. Well, you know why they're not fully engaged? Is because they're not feeling appreciated and they're not feeling challenged enough. And the reason both of those things happen is because they're not being valued for the time they spend and the money they earn. And so by looking at the income-based time management, what's interesting is I'll be talking to a big group of CEOs and I'll ask the question in a poll, is this true or false? Is this statement true or false? I accept there are certain positions within my company that are just the cost of doing business and do not contribute to the bottom line. Anywhere from 80 to 100% of CEOs or leaders in companies will say that's true. You ask the same group of team members or employees, a majority of them will say that's false. And guess what? The answer is false. Anybody working within your company, even vendors, have value. Their time is valuable, and how they're spending their time to produce or help you deliver what you're offering is valuable. And if you don't see them as valuable, then guess what? You're probably not treating them as valuable.
Hey there, guys. My name is Melanie from Mostly Under Control, and I am a member of Jenny's Influencer Entrepreneurs Insiders membership. I've been a part of it since 2017, and over these 6 years, I've taken full advantage of the weekly trainings that Jenny offers and the monthly group coaching. The group coaching is probably my favorite part of the membership. Jenny has taught me so many things for my business. She helped me niche down and write and teach about what I wanted so that I wouldn't burn out. In addition to what she teaches, the networking I've done with other members has been invaluable. I recommend her membership to all of my online business owner friends because it is worth every single penny.
Yes, that makes a ton of sense. And I think when we're looking at it from our standpoint of creators that are putting out content online and monetizing through affiliates or sponsorships or their own products, right? The way in which we look at this is our marketing efforts, our social media, our email, all of this goes into that income-based time management that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Determine what is valuable and what is not.
Well, and, going to your, the influencers where they're content creators and things like that. What's interesting about that is that creation of content, which is going to ideally attract more sponsors and everything else, that is income producing, income generating, and ideally income sustaining all at once. And if they're really doing it effectively with some proprietary aspects around it that distinguish them against everybody else, then all of a sudden they're also creating income enhancing aspects as well too. So they're hitting all the buckets, right? All the buckets.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what we have to start thinking about it, because that's one of the questions I get asked a lot is as people are adding people to their team, well, is this of value to me? And that is what we have to look at. You have to look at what are they producing? What is that? How is that moving the needle on your business and your overall financials? So I love that.
Going back to, asking, what are some things to consider in your time management to make an assessment? And, okay, as you know, as a business owner, what do you love to do and what don't you love to do? I made a significant change in my business in around 2007, 2008, because I wasn't doing what I loved to do, and my clients weren't getting what they loved me doing for them, because of the business model I had at the time was sucking my time away in areas that I wasn't enjoying. And so I literally turned my company upside down and inside out and changed the whole business model so that I could be doing what I loved and my clients could get more of me, while everybody else was, by the way, also doing what they loved. And then, you know, everyone was happy. So our time is extremely valuable. And but so is everyone else's. And I think the biggest cautionary note I like to make with people is when they start to think their time is more valuable than somebody else's. And when a business owner believes their time is more valuable than anybody else in their company, because that comes across big time, and the disengagement happens more quickly than you could possibly imagine when this happens.
So now, what are 3 tips that you might be able to give for better personal time management when we're looking at it based upon that assessment?
Well, one of the big epiphanies I had was in that 1995 time when I got slapped in the face about it being a true asset, is I started to think about how different types of professions, you know, manage their time. And the first thing that came to mind was dentists and doctors' offices. And you call and ask for an appointment, and they give you options, right? They give you options. Now, what's been really interesting about that is from that point forward, whenever I want to schedule any type of a meeting or any type of an appointment of any kind, I give 3 or 4 options that are good for me, right? And 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, one of those options will work for that other person. All right. If not, then they'll offer 3 options and we'll figure it out. Right. But versus this back and forth, waiting to see who's going to, you know, offer an option. But what I've also found is, even with dentist and doctor's office, I will say, you know, this window of time on these days of the week are better for me. And then they actually find a time that works for me. And then I'm not at the mercy of what their schedule is. So it's been really fascinating how much more control I was able to take once I decided I was going to take it with my time. So meetings, I am a big believer that you block your time to do certain things on certain days and really stick to that. But I think the biggest thing is being able to take a look at how you're spending your time and identifying ways you can release time that you really don't need to be spending. Okay. And I think that is the very first thing that needs to happen. But, you know, how do you do that? How do you even know where to do that? And so that's why once we developed these 5 buckets of time, we developed an assessment around it, you know, a self-assessment to see, okay, here's where I'm spending my time. Here's where other people in my company are spending their time. And where are we both spending time that we both don't need to be spending time? And where am I spending time where, and what percentage of that of my time of a week, you know, because then you look at, okay, this percentage is spent in income sustaining, this percentage is spent and you know, you look at what it's based on the hours that you're working. And then you start to see how lopsided you are. And then you start to see that maybe I need to invest in a part-time person. Maybe I need to outsource some of this. Maybe I need to hand this off completely. Right. And I think that is extremely powerful. Once you get that aha, then all of a sudden your mind starts to shift from an expense mentality. Oh, I can't afford to hire this person, to I can't afford not to hire this person because it is eating away at my time that could be more income producing, income generating, or income enhancing.
Absolutely. So we are going to link to the income-based time management assessment that you were just talking about in the
Yes.
notes.
Yes.
You also have a wishful thinking assessment. Can you?
It's called Wishful and Fearful Thinking. It was developed after the release of my most recent book, Dream Wide Awake. And it's also based on Me, Myself, and Inc., the entrepreneurial side of things, and the wishful and fearful thinking that holds people back. Now, what's interesting is I introduced that in Me, Myself, and Inc. from an entrepreneurial perspective. But as I worked with entrepreneurs for all these years and worked with their employees as well, the wishful and fearful thinking factors apply to everybody. And what's fascinating about that is the fact that a lot of those wishful and fearful thinking factors have a direct impact on how you approach your time. And, it's interesting as I was preparing for this interview, knowing we were going to be talking about income-based time management, I realized that, like, for instance, and I might have alluded to it earlier, that, okay, let's say you have a fear of losing control. So as a result, you are micromanaging everything, which means you're probably multitasking ridiculously, focusing on everybody else's business and not getting your own work done. Okay. And what happens is there's things that you would really like to get to, but you can't get to them. And that's what I call inactive control. They're in your control, but nothing's happening with them. And so the reality is, okay, what do you need to stop micromanaging? Okay, what about a fear of letting go? So a fear of letting go of things you don't really enjoy doing because, oh, well, I'm good at it. It doesn't really take that much time, but yet you really aren't enjoying it. And who cares if you can do it in your sleep? If there's somebody else that can do it, and then you could be doing a higher dollar value thing, it's worth letting somebody else do it. Wishful thinking, if only I had more time, is one of the wishful thinkings, okay? But also, if only I had more support, or if only I had more confidence. Okay, so if you don't have the confidence you need, you might be afraid to ask for help. You might be afraid to admit that you don't know how to do something. And as a result, you're struggling and spending more time on something than you need to when you could have just gotten some support. Okay. Or invested in a class to learn and know versus struggling trying to figure it out yourself. So that's what's fascinating about this is how these there's subconscious aspects that are impacting your time management too, and your awareness and being able to be aware of the if only I had more or the fear factors will be quite helpful for sure.
Yes, no, absolutely. So we are going to make sure that we link to both those, the wishful and fearful thinking assessment, as well as the income-based time management assessment. Cherie, this was such a good conversation. I truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and my audience.
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
All right. Well, there you have it. Clearly, you're going to be able to put your personal time management that's going to be income-based into those 5 different buckets. But before you can do that, we want to make sure that you grab that income-based time management assessment so that you can figure out what areas you're lacking, what areas you're putting too much time into, just like Cherie spoke about. So I want to make sure that you go and grab that. It is linked in the show notes in your podcasting app, and we want to make sure that you have a chance to grab that. As well as, if you haven't already joined me inside the Insiders group, if you go over to the blog post, it is linked there for you, and it's giving you the special pricing that is only meant for our podcast listeners. So make sure you take advantage of that. As always, you guys, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to listen in. If you haven't already left a rating and review, I would so appreciate it if you took the time to do that. Just pop into your podcasting app, leave a quick rating, and then a 2-sentence review would be amazing. All right, guys, until the next time, I will see you all then.